One of the things I find hilarious in the whole gaming community is the whole "it's okay when Nintendo does it" mentality that many gaming websites and gamers seem to have, where Nintendo can do literally anything and get a free pass for it. And at this point, the question isn't, has Nintendo done this yet? It's more like, what hasn't Nintendo done yet? I mean, I could make a whole video talking about everything Nintendo has done, from the whole end user license agreement you are forced into accepting. You can't even just power the system off and sell it if you disagree with it. You have to hit accept. Or the whole Nintendo system locking DRM. And let's not forget how Nintendo has not only tried to shut down an esports stream of Nintendo's own games, but they've also pretty much abused the copyright system in every way possible on YouTube. Not only content IDing music and gameplay footage like cutscenes, but they've even started to content ID symbols in games, such as the little 8 in Mario Kart 8. And I saw one person who actually had to censor that out in his video of it because he didn't want to get content ID'd by Nintendo. However, despite all the cries of Nintendo fans happily lining up to defend Nintendo for every action they do, the truth comes out time and time again. And today, over the last few days, a bunch of things have happened to prove my point. One with copyright, and several with Nintendo's own decisions. Now, let me go over the copyright one first, since this is interesting, especially in a time where gaming companies have gotten more and more liberal about copyright. Now, the first company I'm going to talk about here is Valve. Now, you may be wondering, why am I even talking about Valve in a Nintendo video? Well, because a few days ago, what happened was somebody released a whole update mod to Half-Life 2. That updates a lot of it. Titled Half-Life 2 Update, the game featured improved lighting, bug fixes, and of course also new effects too. And the game was pretty much a graphical update to Half-Life 2, and it was released officially on Steam, and well, lots of people downloaded it and gave it praise. Now, of course, you had to own Half-Life 2, but you could buy it and download the mod and play it, just like other PC games. And speaking of updates to Valve games, Black Mesa. If you don't know what that was, it was a video game that was a remake by fans of the original Half-Life on the Source engine. And after being years in development, the first version was released that had a lot of the game remade in the Source engine. And well, it became a hit and was praised by lots of fans. And even though they decided to sell the final version, Valve approved it, as long as they didn't use the Half-Life name, of course, and they were able to sell it on Steam. Other companies, on the other hand, usually ignore when people do similar stuff to their games. For example, making fan update mods. And of course, they get lots of praise for it. And when, well, fan recreation mods have been DMCA'd usually by Japanese companies, because here's a trend. Have you noticed how it's always the Japanese companies sending these takedown notices and not the American ones? Meanwhile, Microsoft not only has a far more simple policy on what you can do with their game, but they've even helped encourage fan works, complete with putting one fan production on Xboxes in demo kiosks. And did I mention this same fan production even had references made to it in official media such as Halo 3? I mean, there was even an Easter egg toward this fan production in Halo 3. So what does Nintendo to do to honor their fan base when one devoted fan goes and makes in the Unity 3D engine a remake of the first level of Super Mario 64? You know what Nintendo does instead of giving him a job at Nintendo like Sega did with the guy who made the Sonic CD remake? You know what Nintendo did with him? They served him with a DMCA because it's okay when Nintendo does it. Now, of course, this would have been the end of it if this was any other company. I mean, people would have complained about it for maybe a week or two, maybe posted a mirror on a torrent site, and then it probably would have been nearly forgotten about, except by those who remember this kind of stuff and bring it up the next time something like this happens. I mean, just take a look at the Streets of Rage HD remake, or the one Final Fantasy Type 0 fan localization made on the PSP that got completed and then taken down. Or all the Chrono Trigger remake attempts and sequel attempts. But here's what I find surprising about the whole thing. People were actually defending Nintendo for shutting down their fans. These fans were going after the creator of it, posting on comments on these gaming websites talking about how, oh, Nintendo owns the intellectual property, oh, Nintendo owns the assets, you're not supposed to do stuff with it because it's Nintendo, heh heh, rah rah. And the comment box is flooded with comments like this. These people aren't criticizing Nintendo for shutting down fans expressing their love for a series. They're actually defending Nintendo for this. This has got to be possibly the biggest case of Stockholm Syndrome I've seen in the gaming community. Yet meanwhile, in modding communities such as Pokemon's or Halo's, people actually take assets from the newer ones and port them back to the old ones, such as with Halo PC, where people port the weapons and models from Halo 3, Reach, and 2 into Halo 1. Yet here we have Nintendo fans defending Nintendo with every single straw they can grasp, everything they can latch onto, trying to defend Nintendo against somebody making a fan game. God, Nintendo fans are pathetic. Anyways, on to the next topic. By now we all know about the Pokemon model. Released 2 games, but with minor differences between each game. Now with Pokemon, usually the differences have to do with which Pokemon you can catch. Of course, you can clear the game without catching them all, and that's what a lot of people probably do. But to quote, catch them all, like it says on the box with the older ones, you actually have to buy 2 games. And it maybe have a second Game Boy, or DS. Nintendo's Fire Emblem series is now going to be following the Pokemon model though, as the next Fire Emblem game is going to have 2 separate versions. However, this is going to be a lot more severe than it is with Pokemon, as while the game does have 2 story paths, Nintendo is trying to milk the series for what it's worth. As when you buy the game, you will be locked into the path of the version you bought when it came to storyline. However, at a discount, you can buy the second version storyline as DLC. So you essentially have to pay for a big part of the game to get the whole game. But the digital version takes it a step further. Remember those images where you used to see on image boards, you'd see the whole picture where they cut parts of it out and tried to say this is DLC in 2015 or whatever? Well, here's what the Fire Emblem digital version does. You'll play the game up to chapter 6 or whatever. Then you'll pick a path. But once you've picked said path, the other story path will be permanently locked away on disc. And just letting you know that on disc thing was a metaphor, the same thing still applies. But it's locked away in the game data until you buy it as DLC. This is straight up greed. I mean, this is as greedy as it gets. You've got the game, you've got the content developed, but it's locked away until you pay money for it. Imagine if Mass Effect had 2 Renegade and Paragon versions. Imagine if Shin Megami Tensei had a Law and Chaos version. You know what would happen? People would talk about how EA is doing the worst possible thing, and there would be tons of backlash. But yeah, I'm not seeing too much backlash from this. In fact, I'm actually seeing some people online saying, meh, who cares, I'm buying it anyway. And some of these people are even saying they're going to buy 2 copies of it. Way to show Nintendo that this is a bad business practice, fans. So now, while we're on the whole DLC thing, I might as well mention the whole amiibo situation. Now, Nintendo has thought it's been a great idea to do physical DLC, kind of like what they did with the Skylander series, and lock away parts of the games until you pay up and buy the amiibos and use it to unlock them. Better AI in Smash Brothers? Pay up for an amiibo. want to have something such as, exclusive weapons and gear in some of the other games, like Splatoon, which is going to have amiibos, pay up and buy an amiibo. And here's the best part. The amiibos have not only been in shortages in America, I'm saying only in America because I have a friend in the UK who told me that amiibos are commonplace in stores. And of course, on eBay, if you look where all those amiibos for $50 are coming from, they're coming from like Germany or the UK or Russia or other countries. But at the same time, the amiibo situation is more like bronies were in 2012, where you have all these grown men buying up these amiibos. So basically, you actually have to spend a ton of money because you've got all these rabid grown men fighting over these amiibos with their dollars. And if you want this exclusive content, you have to pay more than just $1 or $2 like you would on some other game. You literally have to pay $14, all for this one thing. But hey, you get a nice McDonald's Happy Meal toy, right? And remember, all this content is still locked away on disk. But all in all, I think I might as well end this video by saying this. The worst part about all this stuff is that Nintendo gets less media attention when they do it usually than other companies do. Or they get their fans and the gaming media giving them a free pass. That is all.